Hello everybody, welcome to the fourth episode of the NextGen Web Podcast, brought to you by Blazity, the Next.js development experts. My name is Michał, I'm a software engineer at Blazity, and I'm here with Filip.
Hello everyone, my name is Filip, I am also software engineer at Blazity.
So, the topic for today is kind of different from our previous talks. So today we are going to focus on styling our Next.js apps. So we are going to talk about some different approaches, how you can style your application, the pros, the cons, what are our favorites to style the Next.js apps, and overall just a broad take on how to incorporate styling to our web apps. So we can kind of discuss what do we have on the market to style our applications.
Yeah, so right now we have a lot of tools we can use to style our Next.js application. It depends, of course, on our use case, on our preferences, and on the next version we are using. So currently the most popular we have is probably Tailwind CSS, but it's not the only option. We also have CSS modules and a lot of CSS in JS solutions. We will be also talking about like side tools, we can say, not styling libraries by per se, we can say, which is of course V0, which is covered in many episodes of our podcast.
Pretty much every single episode have some kind of V0 incorporation inside. Yeah.
V0 is very NextGen Web, so
that's true.
It can become the part of our podcast. And some of the component libraries we have. So maybe let's start from like the whole overview that we can do almost, we can achieve the same result with different approaches, I would say. And the first thing about styling and CSS is I would like to mention the article, the website I was looking into when preparing for this podcast, which is the CSS Zen Garden. So this is the website which shows us the whole idea, the whole concept of separation of concerns, that we shouldn't mix up markup and scripts and styling into one place. We should have it all in different files, different layers of our web architecture. And in this website, it will be probably linked in the description of our podcast. We can see the document with markup and a lot of stylings that are in separate files. And with a simple click of a button, we can change the style, which almost entirely switches the layout of our application. And the whole goal is to show that with this separation of concerns, we can easily switch up styling without touching the markup. But we have some like ups and downs to this, as mentioned by the Tailwind, one of Tailwind creators, Adam Wathan, if I'm spelling this correctly. So with this approach, we of course can say that our concerns are separated, our markup is separated from our styling. But is our styling separated from our markup? Because if we look into the styling files, we'll see that our markup structure is like mirrored completely. And the other advantages and disadvantages is that if we, for example, want to create, for example, some generic components in our markup and then maybe edit one of the cases but not touch the others, we'll end up adding a bunch of class names and selectors, which will make our codes less readable. So this article will also be linked into the description, and I think this is the great place to start talking about Tailwind, which is our first contender, we can say. And in this article, one of its creators stated why he thought that creating something like Tailwind, which is like utility first CSS framework, is relevant for users. And here we can say violates the law of not of separating our concerns. We have a lot of class names added to our markup, but in the end, I think there isn't really way to make our files clean and usable and generic in every situation. So there isn't a perfect tool. And for the Tailwind, which is also good to mention that it was created by, I mentioned Adam Watton, Jonathan Reining, David Hemphill, and Steve Sugar. With this tool, we have like several pros and cons, we can say. So first of all, Tailwind is easy to maintain. We can use it in big applications. We can easily customize a lot of things. We can extend our theme. We can change our theme entirely. We have support for light modes, dark mode, for color modes supported by our system preferences. So for example, if we have in our machine stated that we prefer dark mode, we can set up our application to have dark mode enabled by default. The one also thing that is nice about Tailwind is that it's zero runtime, so the performance overall is really good, and it is, I think, the most recommended approach by Next.js developers. We even have the question during project initialization in CLI if we want to use Tailwind, which is like the go-to solution in this case. But we also have some cons in this example.
Yeah.
Because first of all, with Tailwind, we have to maybe not memorize, because we have a lot of tools and documentation for that, but we have to get to know a lot of utility class names, which sometimes are a little bit different than the mirroring styling in CSS.
Yeah, that's
so
true.
For example, sometimes use text to style our paragraphs, sometimes use font for different things. We also have things like uppercase without text or font. So this can get confusing. After a while of using Tailwind, you will get used to it, but at first it can be a little bit tricky.
Yeah.
The second thing I would say is our class names can get long and maybe less readable, because, for example, if we want to apply a lot of styling to an element, we have to bunch a lot of class names, which of course will decrease the readability of our code. And if we use Tailwind, if we create a big application in Tailwind and we scale it, it would be hard to get from Tailwind into another styling tool. This is also, I would say,
that's
downside.
true. I would also kind of stop on the big class name disadvantage. So I have kind of maybe controversial opinion on Tailwind, which is people tend to be kind of skeptic and hate Tailwind until they actually use it in a project. That was a person myself. Before I've used the Tailwind in a project, I was like, these class names just kind of reminded me of the old Bootstrap approach and just making the code a bit messy and unreadable. Also, you've mentioned the kind of the differences in the naming of the class names. I would say at the beginning, there is pretty steep learning curve. When you are using Tailwind for the first time, I caught myself just going into the docs many times, but pretty much as in any new tool, you have to kind of work your way through at the beginning. But after using the Tailwind for several hours, the overall efficiency of styling the app, in comparison, for example, to more traditional way, which would be, for example, the CSS modules, I would say dramatically increased. just by having also the IntelliSense for the Tailwind classes, and also the approach of the mobile first design in Tailwind, and just the utilities which helps you to create the responsive designs very quickly and very intuitive. And also we've said that the customization in Tailwind was very well thought of. Just customizing your Tailwind app is a piece of cake basically. So I would say that's a great tool. But yeah, it has some cons. So we said that the code can look a bit messy, and just trying to migrate from Tailwind to another tool could be pretty hard. But just considering all the pros Tailwind brings you and enhances your overall efficiency as a developer, I would say that's like the go-to solution right now, installing the apps. And especially just the fact that Next uses Tailwind just as a default option for styling the apps kind of proves the point that Tailwind is just a good tool for us developers.
Yes, and I think this is the great moment to also talk about some tools that incorporate Tailwind into our applications to make our life easier. And of course, I think the HOT library that is being used in many applications right now, and also V0, is the ShadCN UI library, which brings us a lot of components based on Radix primitives. So this is also a way to make our life easier, because for example we have some parts of our application that sometimes can produce some problems when it comes to accessibility and overall user experience, things like accordion or modals. We often have to deal with them and make some repetitive
and let's
issues.
be honest, developers are not very keen to work on the accessibility stuff. If there is a tool that handles it for us, perfect. That's a good thing for sure.
Yeah, it's hard to work on every aspect of the components, with the performance, with user experience, with accessibility, with making the code readable and easy maintained for other developers. There are a lot of stuff to cover, but with ShadCN, almost all of those issues are resolved, because we have some customizable prepared without styling pieces of Tailwind code that are like ready to use out of the box. So we can use it for, as I mentioned, models. We have accordions, we have forms, which are, I think, one of the most common pains in developers' lives, like handling forms and stuff like that. So this makes our life easier. Of course, it also has its disadvantages. There are some issues when it comes, for example, with portals. Sometimes I was catching myself tweaking the ShadCN components just to resolve some issue with navigation bars, because the drop-down menu wasn't appearing in the place I wanted it to be. And the second thing about, for example, React 19, which was mentioned in our previous episode, is that after refactoring refs and removing forward refs, we have to update our ShadCN also for that, because without forward refs the API is a bit different, and we can get a bunch of warnings with that. So yeah, I think we have the Tailwind covered. There's also one thing I would like to mention is also libraries like CVA, for example, Class Variance Authority, which can help us when building generic reusable blocks of code we use in our applications. For example, buttons. Like, we can have different styles of buttons in our applications, and of course we can create a component for every button, but we have a solution for that with
Yeah,
CVA.
just don't do it. Use the CVA and other tools that allow you to just get the variants of the component
Yes,
right.
so we can have the variants based on intent, based on size. We can create compound variants, a lot of stuff that will make our lives easier and our colleagues' lives easier when they will read our code. So yeah, I think we can go to the CSS modules.
Yeah, I would actually mention also one thing in the chat.cn, because you told us that you were tweaking the component code.
Yes.
For the people that haven't used the chat.cn before, it uses kind of different way of getting the components in your app. So instead of just npm installing some packages, for example, Material UI, which is kind of the go-to solution for React, I guess, if we're talking about the like ready components library. The chat.cn takes kind of different approach. So you're not getting kind of a black box with the component. You are simply getting the code of the component straight into your app, which helps you kind of to understand what is going on under the hood. And if you have some cases, as you said, that you have to kind of tweak the code, it's not like, a hassle just to get over some kind of bug. You can simply do it in your code base because you have everything simply in your components code.
Yes.
And I'm a big fan of this approach, and it reduces the kind of the black box feeling of the components you have.
Yes, it's really nice because the only thing we get is just some part of React code that has Tailwind, and we can do anything we want. We can use this as it is. We can edit it entirely. It all depends on us. So yeah, this is a very, I think, reliable solution. V0 uses it.
Yeah,
and of course, and it's also I think a very friendly way to like get into Tailwind right now.
Yeah. And just when you're using the Tailwind CSS, I would say there's no better library just to have the easiest kind of way of styling the app, which is the chat.cn with the Tailwind, kind of the go-to solution. So just to sum up the Tailwind topic, I guess both of us are very big fan of. And I think we can go straight into the more traditional approach, which is the CSS modules.
That's right. So with CSS modules, we just have plain CSS for our files. It's also a good tool, I guess, good tool, like just using CSS to style your application. But as every tool mentioned today, it has its own downsides and disadvantages. At first, when I was starting with React and Next.js, I was really liking the CSS modules approach. It was before the rise in popularity of Tailwind CSS. There was like the whole discussion was between using CSS in JS libraries like styled components, for example, and CSS modules. Of course, it changed a little bit after introduction of React Server components, but it was some time ago. So I really like the CSS modules, the feeling of using like a native way to style our components, and the structure of it. So each one of my components had its own file for styling, and it looked very nice for me. I really like the structured approach. I like to keep my code libraries organized, and it was also easier for me as someone experienced with CSS, but I wasn't experienced back then with, for example, styled components. It was easier for me to just create a plain CSS file and import it into my components than use some custom syntax, template literal, stuff like that. So it was nice for me. And we also have the ability to use preprocessors in our CSS modules. So we can use SCSS, we can enhance our CSS with more extensive approach. And we have the support from Next.js to module CSS, which is with .module.css extension. But of course, as everything, it has some downsides. So the first of all, for global styling, we need to make some workarounds. We need to make some standard syntax to use it. Which can be inconvenient if we contrast it with the saying that module CSS is easy for beginners, because it can get tricky when it comes to global styling. And the second thing is that CSS modules are like based on class names when it comes to scoping. So for example, we can have like similar files in our application, but in the end it needs to bundle and see which files come to which components. So we have to use class names for that. And with adding these class names, our style sheet files can get bigger, so the performance can be tricky sometimes. And of course, with style sheet files, it can block the rendering, the painting of our application. And related to that is that CSS modules are dependent on tools like Webpack, for example. So yeah, it adds another moving part in the build flow, which can get crashed, for example.
Yeah, so I guess here, if we kind of compare the CSS modules and the Tailwind, in our case, I guess the Tailwind would be the go-to solution. But also, if you are kind of the beginner developer, I would say that jumping straight into tools like Tailwind wouldn't be my recommendation. Maybe rather just getting the basic, syntax of CSS, which is pretty much the basics, and getting the good hang of it, how you style your apps, and after that, going forward with some kind of Tailwind tools. I would say that's like the go-to solution.
The Tailwind is like a new cool kid on the block.
Yeah.
And with module CSS, we have the thing like, it was okay once in a day, but right now we don't really want to use it because it feels a little bit old. It's like eating a vanilla ice cream. I know some of people may like vanilla ice creams, but when you can have like a strawberry ice cream with chocolate toppings on top, you just choose it. So the same thing with Tailwind and module CSS.
Yeah, I would say that once you kind of feel the efficiency you get with Tailwind, and you can see how fast you can style your application, especially with all the utilities helping you to achieve the best responsive design possible, all the utilities that comes with, for example, dark mode, it's pretty hard to come back to the kind of the native like CSS modules way. So yeah, I would say this is like the kind of the sum up of our take on the CSS modules, and we are slowly going to the kind of the last contender if we are talking about styling the apps, which is the CSS in JS. For example, I guess the most popular library for that would be the styled components. I had the pleasure to use it once in a production project. Maybe not the pleasure, to be honest. I wasn't really the fan of the CSS in JS approach. I know there are some people that are fans of mixing the JS and CSS right in the components file. I would say I'm not a big fan of it.
It's hard to be not biased in this discussion. It's hard to talk about CSS in JS solutions when you are like the co-author of a library that is called Style to Tailwind.
Yeah.
But it was popular in some time frame, but right now I think it's like mostly being taken out in favor of Tailwind.
Yeah.
The nice thing about CSS in JS solutions like styled components you mentioned, but of course we have emotion, we have stitches, we have linearia from our colleagues in CallStack also. We have the ability to create the CSS in the components file, so we don't have necessarily the necessity to create a new file. We also can easily create design tokens, we can use them without workarounds, so we can just create design token in JS and use it in our components file directly without any tricky hacky ways. And we also have a nice support for dynamic styles, which also comes from the power of JS. But on the other hand, all of this JS comes to our bundle size, first of all.
That's one of the biggest concerns, I would say, with the CSS and JS. Just, having to have in the back of your mind all of the bundle size you're going to get with the CSS in JS, and just taking care of it in the proper way. That is one of the main concerns why using just these types of solutions. And also just overall performance while using such tools. When you have, for example, the Tailwind, when you have the zero runtime, kind of the advantages here are kind of being overwhelmed by the cons of these type of solutions, I would say.
Yes, and of course, like we talked about learning curve in Tailwind, I think learning curve for CSS in JS can get a little bit higher even, because we have to wrap around the whole idea of using our styling in JS file. We also have to get to know the syntax of it, and that we can use the power of JS inside of it, which is not so maybe logical at first. And the second thing is that related to performance, we can have some caching problems with that. And of course, as I mentioned, with CSS modules were dependent on tools like Webpack, and of course with CSS in JS, we also have to depend heavily on any external library we're using. If this is like styled components or linearia or stitches, we have to depend on it and depend on its dependencies, which can get our dependency chain really long, and all of these moving parts somehow can mess up our application.
Yeah, and also here I would say that overall writing of the styles, so you have to kind of make the template literal for the CSS in JS. In comparison for kind of the IntelliSense in Tailwind, for example, the pace at which you are, writing the styles, just like there is no real comparison here, to be honest.
Yeah, there are even extensions for MacBook to use that are like helping you with the Tailwind code, so you can specify the CSS you want to add, for example, font weight or anything like that, and it will show you the relevant Tailwind class for that. So it was also a great tool that I was using when I first started with Tailwind. So it can also be helpful for beginners.
Yeah, for example, if you are trying to switch the styling from like traditional CSS modules to a tool like Tailwind, for example, you have, as you said, just simple generation of the Tailwind classes based on the native CSS, which speeds up the refactoring process pretty drastically. So we also have some kind of utilities just to help to achieve the best styling outcome.
Yeah, I think this is also a good moment to talk about maybe not styling frameworks, but style like component libraries, which were used more often in past Next.js and React versions. Right now, when the React server components were introduced, some of its benefits are not as big as it was before, but still we have a lot of contenders in this area. So we have Chakra, for example, we have Material UI. And what do you think about that?
Also here I'm a pretty big fan of tool like Mantine, for example. So it's kind of the alternative for the kind of the go-to solution, which is the Material UI, I would say right now. So they also think of the server-side approach. So they are actually the Next.js compatible. And for example, if you're using Mantine, the big advantage there, I would say, is being able to customize your theme very easily. I remember when I was using the Material UI, which is also great, which is also very highly customizable. I found it a bit more hard to get the desired outcome from the components, especially if we have some like heavy customizations in our design files from Figma, and we have to do like some very custom stuff. It was pretty hard to achieve. I would say it was a bit easier in Mantine. So overall, we have some solutions with the kind of ready components, but I would say right now the whole trend is more leaning towards the ShadCN way with Tailwind styling, especially in the Next.js new versions. I would say this is like the go-to solution to use.
Yes, I think the Tailwind right now with the Next 14 and 15 around the corner with React 19, this is the maybe not the easiest way to style your applications, but probably somehow easy. But I think this is the most efficient one. But the other thing is that we need to remember that these are just tools. So these are very case specific and based on our preferences and like the team agreements. We can pick each one of them. Each one of them has its advantages and disadvantages. Like we cannot use Hammer for everything in our life. The same thing goes to tools in programming, not only styling, but for React frameworks and programming languages overall. So I think it's okay to talk about it, discuss good sides and bad sides. And in this place, we would like to ask you about your preferences with styling in your next applications. Do you use Tailwind? If not, why? What do you like about Tailwind and other tools like CSS Modules, CSS in JS solutions like styled components? Maybe use something even different. We would like to hear about it. Let us know in the comments.
Yeah, for sure. Just let us know what is your go-to solution for styling the Next apps, overall the web apps. As there are many solutions available on the market, we are very curious what is your go-to solution. If you agree with us that the Tailwind is a go-to solution right now, we are curious about your opinions here. And I think we've mentioned quite a lot of approaches installing the apps. So we've talked about the Tailwind, about CSS in JS, also about CSS modules. I think we can pretty much end our fourth episode. So as always, we encourage you guys to give us as much feedback as possible. Leave a comment. If you're not yet subscribed, make sure to do it now. And also, as we said before, if you have any insights and preferences about styling your apps, just leave us a comment below.
Yeah, thank you guys for watching, and see you in the next episode.
Thank you.